Okay, welcome everyone. It looks like we have hit 10 o'clock and we've got a great group of attendees here and might see a few more trickle in, but we'll get started to keep everything on track. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar focusing on how to keep your environment safe. For those of you not familiar with Compro, we are a managed IT and managed print provider with offices in Vancouver and Surrey. And we've been serving customers in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland since 1998. My name is Mike Hamfelt. I'm the Vice President here at Compro and one of the partners. And again, really excited to have everyone here. Network security has become as important to your network planning as connectivity itself. So the feedback we've been hearing from prospective customers and many of our current clients is that, our new clients, is that network security has become top of mind in their business. However, they don't even know where to start to address when addressing it. So today I'm really excited to introduce you to Jason Pryce from Datto. He'll be sharing with you the current state of network security today, examples of how security breaches may occur, and for making sure your environment is protected moving forward. Steve Dragicevich and Phil Isabella are both very involved with client experience at Compro, and they're monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat. And if we're unable to answer them during the webinar, we'll be sure to circle back afterwards. So Jason, thank you for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. So yes, Jason Pryce from Datto. The majority of the people on this call probably have no idea who Datto is, nor should you. Essentially what we are the leading provider of MSP delivered IT solutions in the world. So we were founded in 2007. We have 23 offices around the world. We have 9 private data centers. In regards to Canada, we actually have 2 data centers that are located in Canada where data does not leave the Canadian border. We have over 700,000 small and medium-sized businesses being protected. We have over 1,900 employees and continuing to grow. So today, I just want to talk about the elephant in the room. There are threats all around us, right? And they come in tons of different forms, and we're going to talk about a couple of those different forms of threats today. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about the e-crime landscape and how it was a couple of years ago in 2016. In 2016, there was about $1.5 trillion that was generated from these sorts of e-crimes, right? And if you take a look, right, over 860 billion from illicit, illegal online markets, over 500 billion from theft of trade secrets or intellectual property, and the list goes on and on and on, right? And you're like, wow, that's a huge number. That's crazy. Until you take a look at where we are today, right? So that was 1.5, and that was about 5 years ago. If you look at Canada alone, Canada is currently around 6 trillion, right? And the US GDP estimate is about $21 trillion. So I said we're going to talk about the different types of threats, right? So there's, compromised identity. That's when somebody takes your personal identifying information, they pretend to be you, they commit crimes, they are able to get benefits, they're able to trick people, deceive people, things of that nature based off of your information. There's compromised access, right? Compromised access is getting the ability to get into somebody's building, right, or their business, right? They're able to get into your network and access things they shouldn't be able to access. And then there's ransomware. So you cannot pick up a newspaper or turn on the TV over the last year without hearing about this thing called ransomware, right? And so what ransomware is, for those who may not be aware, is a form of malware that encrypts a victim's files, right? And once it's encrypted, there's no way to get that information back unless you pay money to get what's called a decryption key, which now gives you the ability to unlock your data and get your data back. Right. And so this is where we're at in terms of that. Right. This is one of the larger growth areas that we're seeing, that people are being attacked and being able to have to pay monies. I like looking at different sorts of ransomware because there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different variants of ransomware. And they use different social schemes and things of that nature in order to really spread. This one is probably one of my favorites to kind of talk about. This is called the popcorn time ransomware. And what this does is it will infect your computer and it will give you an option. Hey, if you want your data back, you need to pay me $10,000. Or if you don't have $10,000, if you send this to two of your friends and they open it, we'll give you your data back. So it turns people who are victims into criminals as well. And you have to think about it, right? If you are in your fifth year and you're in college and you've been working on your thesis for the last 6 months and all of a sudden you can't have access to it because it is now encrypted, and all you have to do is send it to two of your friends, who knows, right? It's not the best thing to do, but it does happen. And then we're seeing a ton of other things involving ransomware, right? So we're seeing ransomware extortion, right? Not only they lock up your data and encrypt your data, but they take it a step further, right? And they start threatening you that, hey, if you do not pay, not only are you not going to get your data back, but I'm going to expose all of this data and to the public, right? And so now you're faced with humiliation, possibly. Now you're faced with the possible threat of competitive information getting out that you don't want to get out, intellectual properties, all of that now is at the ability for them to release. And so the thing is, at this point, you're probably like, why do they care about small and medium-sized businesses? Why are they the target? It doesn't necessarily make sense, right? I'm a small guy and I have a dry cleaning business, or I have a delivery routing business or something of that nature. And there's a couple different reasons why you as a small or medium-sized business is a prime target, right? So when we look at small and medium-sized business, they spend about 10% of their annual budget on IT, and that's including the support, right? And that's a really low amount of money to really be dedicating towards your infrastructure and making sure that you are good and prevented from having any sort of attacks or ransomware or down equipment or anything of that nature. Also, your equipment typically is older, right? You have a bigger gap between your upgrades to new systems. And due to that, you also sometimes are dealing with systems that are not patched correctly, right? And if you know anything about threats and cybersecurity, these bad guys are looking for the weakest link, right? And if your systems are not patched correctly and updated correctly, that may be the weakest link for you. A lot of times, as a smaller business, you're wearing many hats, right? Not only are you the salesperson, but you're also the tech person, right? You have to pretty much do everything, right? And so there's a number of reasons why, as a small and medium-sized business, you are that target. And when we start taking a look at the amount of threats per user, as you go down the organizational size, so if you look at like between 1 and 250, 1 in 6. For every 6 employees, there's typically about 1 threat, right? And if you look at the larger organizations, ones that are over 2,500, the same can be said for every 11, you have 1 threat. So I just want to take a moment to talk more so about the evolution of cyber threats. So we all surf the web. We're probably all around on our computers right now. We probably open up a couple of browsers today. But one thing people truly don't understand is how the internet or how the web is actually broken down. It's actually 3 different places, right? So first you have the surface web, right? The surface web is where we all go to. We go to Google, we go to CNN, we go to BBC, we go to all these different sites, and we're able to input information or extract information. And most people think that's what the internet is. But that's just the surface once again. When you get down to the next level, the deep web is where you have all your medical records, financial documents, subscription information, credit card information, different reports, all of that lives right there. And the criminals, they really want that information right there, right? That information is gold to them, right? because they can take that information, they can transact that information, they can sell it on the dark web, they can become you, all of this stuff based off that information, right? And where are they going to do that at? They're going to do that in the dark web, right? The dark web is where it's hard to track things that are happening. You have drug trafficking down there. You have a whole bunch of illegal and illicit activities happen there. You have different Tor content. It's a dark and seedy place. So when you add the deep web and the dark web, that's 96% of the content of the web. While you're there going to Google or CNN or whatever the case may be, you're only tapping 4% of this huge network that's out there. So the question is, all right, so who are the threats? Where are they coming from? And it's from different places. You have hacking collectives, people that, you know, will band together across the world, and their mission is to cause havoc and wreak havoc. Sometimes they say that they're doing it for good reasons, to, you know, attack Elon Musk or, you know, this person or that person. But, you know, that's one form of the threat. There's IoT hackers, right? How many people on this call, you know, have a bunch of Wi-Fi doorbells and Wi-Fi lights in their house, and now they even have Wi-Fi lawnmowers and even Wi-Fi diapers that would alert you when your kid has used the bathroom. It's really weird, but it is true. And so the thing is, these are all potential access points for the bad guys to get into your network and, you know, wreak havoc. We have ransomware developers, right? It's over $8 billion. There's over $8 billion in damages since 2018, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? I don't want to be the person to deploy it. However, I'm going to create this, you know, cool package, and I'm going to sell it and lease it out to people. And when people pay the person who sent it out, I get a part of that action, right? And so you can sit back, relax, and just keep getting paid as people pay for their ransom. You have nation states, right? Countries that don't like US or Canada, right? You have the North Koreas of the world and Ukraine. You have Russia, right? These countries, they actually have like full factories of people, and their only job is to come in, punch in the clock, and be able to go and hack as many computers as possible. And then you have like tons of insider threats that these threats are coming from as well. When we take a look at the numbers, earlier I said that, you know, small and medium-sized businesses are targeted, and it's about at 43%, right? And one of the comebacks, or one of the things that people typically say is, why would they care about my data? And at the end of the day, they really truly do not care about your data. They care about how much that data means to you. 85% of all email attachments are harmful. 91% of attacks are launched from a phishing attack. 24,000 new malicious apps are removed from the App Store daily, right? That's an insane number. I did not know there was 24,000 apps currently in the App Store anyway, but to think that each day that amount is removed is kind of scary. And in the time it took me to go through this slide, about 4 or 5 businesses have been hit with ransomware. So there are a couple things that you can do to make sure that you minimize the chance of being a target. And one of those things are to acknowledge that you are a target. Whether you're online, whether you're offline, the worst thing you can ever say, or the worst attitude you can ever have, is that it won't happen to you. I say online and offline because sometimes we get so into the thoughts of, okay, we need to lock down our computers and things of that nature, but we're getting rid of valuable information to a criminal right in our garbage, right? And when that garbage goes outside, guess who has access to the outside garbage bins? Those criminals, right? So just keeping that mindset that you are always a target, right? And that's for anybody. There's this article that I read. This gentleman right here, huge, well-known cybersecurity expert, and he had to, get humbled because he was hacked, right? Imagine how that looks on his LinkedIn, right? I know all about cybersecurity, set together, hacked, right? So it can happen to any and everybody. Make sure you have policies and procedures, right, that are actually written and in a place where people can actually see it and understand it and live it, right? When we start taking a look at the different threats that we've seen, right, even like in the different like articles that I've thrown up here, right, we're showing that some of the data, I mean, some of these devices have hidden back doors, right? That people are able to get in and be able to manipulate and do things of that nature on those networks. Ongoing employee training, right? This is probably one of the biggest things that I can really stress. The reason it's if computers operated in a room by themselves with no human intervention, it's almost impossible that they'd be hacked or compromised. It's typically a human element that gets involved, that gets in the way of technology that allows this to happen. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are having on-purpose trainings with your employees, showing them what to look out for, right? What is a good email? What is a bad email? How to tell the difference between a good email and a bad email, right? If somebody calls and says, hey, we changed our new mailing platform, and so our old servers got shut down, so we're going to be using this server now, right? And all of a sudden you start seeing requests coming for money from that new server. Like, who do you talk to? Who do you validate? Who do you verify with, right? So this is going to be probably one of the most important things that you can do. Password management and multi-factor authentication, right? This is huge, right? Especially multi-factor authentication, because this is probably one of the more annoying things that you have to deal with, right? If you don't know what multi-factor authentication is, it's also called two-factor authentication. Essentially, this is another layer of security that allows your systems to verify and validate who is giving access to. So typically, you'll put your password in, you'll then get a text or a alert from an application, and then you'll say, yes, it is me. You'll click everything is okay, and then it'll give you access into the network, right? So having a good password and multi-factor authentication is going to be important, because what we're seeing is when it comes to the different passwords that are out there, we're seeing that people just aren't making the best decisions in regards to those, right? So in 2021, earlier this year, the largest password compilation of all time leaked online, and it had over 8.4 billion entries. And we start taking a look at what those entries were, right? When we start taking a look at like the number one password that was found, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you start looking at the number 4th, it's actually the word password. Nothing else, just password, all lowercase, and that those are the number one passwords people are using according to these different hacks. And so we start taking a look at the different statistics. 65% of people reuse passwords across multiple sites. 95% claim to understand the risk of reusing passwords across multiple sites, yet 59% do it anyway. And then 49% of employees change or add a digit or character to the password when updating a password for the company every 90 days, right? So there's a ton of reasons why you want to have multiple passwords, right, for multiple sites. And you don't want to use the same passwords on your on-prem network and for your own personal stuff that you do for your organization. Because typically an organization has better safeguards than you may have at home. And so if they're easily able to get access via your own personal network, then they can now do the same with your more protected company network. So that brings me to this guy right here. About 3 or 4 years ago, the state of Hawaii sent out an alert. There were incoming missiles coming from North Korea. Luckily, that was not the case. It was a false alarm. This gentleman apparently was hacked. And, you can feel sorry for him, and, it sucks. I mean, he's responsible to make sure his systems are protected and to make sure that all the alerts go out correctly. But it's hard to be, sympathetic when you look closer and he actually has the password written on the monitor right there for all people to see, right? And this picture was actually pulled directly from an article that they did with him prior to that event happening, right? So making sure that you have a good password, making sure that you use multi-factor authentication is going to be crucial. You never want to leave devices unattended. How many times have you gone to your dentist or your doctor's office and the receptionist has gone back to talk to the doctor? You look over and all that information is just there, open for anybody to look and to do whatever bad things they need to do, right? So anytime you leave your desk, anytime you turn your back, your computer should be locked. You also want to be careful what you click on, right? So you want to avoid certain sorts of websites or certain types of websites or certain softwares that you may be downloading, certain things that's coming through via your email, right? So we're seeing a bunch of different types of situations, right? So we see in situations where there's sextortion emails, right? Hey, we saw you doing something inappropriate on your camera and we're going to expose it. If you don't believe me, click this link right here and we're going to show you the video of you doing things that are inappropriate on your camera. And you're like, no, it wasn't me. I don't do anything like that. You click the link and unfortunately, you just gave people access to your network or allow people to actually implant ransomware on your network. There's another popular scenario that was going around with fake FedEx emails. So more people are home, more people are shopping during the day than they used to because more people are working remotely. And everybody loves getting new stuff in the mail, right? So typically there's a level of anxiety. You can't wait for these new shoes to come in or this new PS5 to come in or whatever the case may be. And so this fake FedEx email comes and say, hey, there's an update on your tracking number, or hey, there's an issue with your address. And what's the first thing you do? You run to the email and you start clicking it, right? Because you either want to see where this item is or you want to correct whatever the problem is because you want your goods. And next thing you know, you've been susceptible to a targeted phishing attack. And unfortunately, you now have the potential to harm your network. Always have antivirus and malware protection on all of your computers. Make sure that it's connected to the internet so you can get the new updates as new virus definitions are always being downloaded. Have a mobile device policy, right? So once again, this is another situation where people are now doing more work remotely. I can be in the grocery store or I can be at a restaurant and I can still be engaging with the things I need to do for my company. And so what happens if somebody leaves iPhone with all that access, at a table and somebody picks it up, right? You now have information like their the SharePoint, their Teams, you have emails, you have all that information, all because somebody did not use the proper procedures to make sure that the device with your company information has been locked. Security, testing, configuration testing, and incident response plan, right? So these need to always happen, right? So you need to make sure that you're aware of where your network is. You need to be aware of the configurations. You need to be aware of things that may change. You need to also be aware of having an incident response plan and making sure that it's updated quite often, right? So the incident response plan is what happens if you come into work one day and your computers all have the blue screen of death or they all got ransomware, right? What needs to happen next? Who do you call? And it's important, I said that it needs to be looked at quite often, is because sometimes people will have an awesome plan and they put it in a desk and 7 months later, a year later, something happens and they're like, good thing I had that plan. But now they look at the plan, everything that's on the plan is outdated. The person who normally handled this no longer works in this department or they no longer work for the company. Since that point, you've added additional servers, right? And so that's why it's all about making sure that you're consistently testing that out, right? And so that brings me to one of my most, one of my favorite quotes, and this is from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And so I liken this to an incident response plan because you can create the plan, but you got to make sure you're punching yourself in the mouth, for lack of a better term, right? You need to make sure that you're testing it to make sure that in an event that plan is going to work for you as it should. And then backups are a must-have, right? Making sure that you are taking your information, backing it up onto a separate device, and be able to make sure that you have that in the event of any sort of disaster. So one of the things we want to do is we want to change expectations around backup, right? And what backup is supposed to be for. So what I want to show you is this. This is probably one of the more important slides that I'm going to show you today, right? What you have is a situation where everything's been going well, right? You come in, your computers are working, everything is good. All of a sudden, a disaster strikes. That disaster, once again, could be anything: blue screen of death, ransomware, a flood, whatever the case may be. So when that happens, there's two things that you need to think about. How much time can I possibly be down and not hurt my business? And what's the most amount of data that I can lose? So when you see this, you see RTO, recovery time objective, and then you see RPO, which is the recovery point objective, right? And so every company, every organization is going to be a little bit different. Some companies, some organizations can afford to be down for 3 hours or 4 hours or a day. Some will not be in business if they're down that long. Some can only have a threshold of being down for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Some companies aren't as transactional, right? So they don't have that much data change throughout the day. So if they had a RPO, or recovery point objective, of getting the data from last night, that may be fine for them. But another company, that can be, thousands of dollars worth of loss. And so those are the things that you need to come to terms with to see what is a good RPO and RTO for you. So as I explained, ransomware is running rampant, and truly it's an epidemic. And one of the things that it's been fueled by is this right here. This is Bitcoin, right? It's a cryptocurrency. Essentially, it's digital money, right? That it has no country backing it. It's all backed by pretty much hope. But the genius of it is that it allows people to transact in an anonymous way. So if a criminal says, "Hey, send me $10,000, or I'm going to make sure you never get your data back," if you send them $10,000 cash, somehow, some way, they will track it down. You send a check, somehow, some way, they'll track the check. Credit card, same thing. But when it comes to this Bitcoin, unfortunately, you can't track it down. It's as if it never got sent to anybody. There's no way to hold people accountable, and the criminals love this. And this right here has really fueled the ability for people to really hold people's data hostage. And we see a ton of different scenarios out there, right? Once again, if you Google ransomware, right? You Google ransomware and your city, or your town, or your parish, or your territory, and you'll find a ton of different places being attacked and hit with ransomware. What we saw over the last year and a half, we saw a ton of situations where medical and healthcare facilities were being attacked, right? And it was a huge uptick. And we start thinking about COVID and the health ramifications, and people being scared, and people getting a lot more information sent to them via the computer, talking about COVID and cures and vaccines and this and the other. You can kind of see how it's easier for those people to be targeted, and therefore these systems to now be impacted. And so once again, we're seeing it all over the place. There's also the Colonial Pipeline, which was a very interesting one, where they were able to, in the US, there's a pipeline that goes from Texas all the way up to around Maryland. And what they were able to do is they were able to send them ransomware, encrypt their data, and it pretty much put half the nation almost at a standstill. Because if you could shut down the pipeline, which shuts down deliveries of gas, and you no longer can you have potential of not having gas for firefighters and police and people working, truck drivers, things of that nature. It can cost so much more money, more than just that $40 million that they or that $5 million that they were trying to get. So before I go any further, I just want to start a quick poll just to see if you guys are paying attention. So Mike, let's launch that poll.
Here you go. The fourth question, might I add, is probably going to be the most controversial, but the most important. So I'll leave that poll open for a minute here.
That's a great question.
It's a debate in my household.
I would ask you where you sit on this, but I don't want you just to sway any decisions. So I'm waiting for the poll to close before I ask you that.
All right, we'll give it 30 more seconds. We're seeing the answers come in here rapidly. Okay, we got just about everyone. So the results are about half the attendees outsource IT and or don't. Most people, you know, are actually a strong number of people randomize the sequence of numbers and letters in their passwords, which I think is fantastic. That's great. Almost everyone has a backup solution, which is fantastic to hear. And as usual, 56% of people say pizza or pineapple belongs on pizza, and I happen to agree with those people.
Fun fact, I learned just today that Hawaiian pizza or Hawaiian style pizza, which has the pineapple on it, was actually invented in Canada. So that was pretty cool.
All right, Jason, I'll end the poll and you can take it away.
Awesome. So by this point in this presentation, you're probably like, all right, so what do I need to do? How do I protect my organization? Right. And so what we wanted to do is we want to stop thinking about just traditional backup. We want you to think about continuity, right? So what continuity is not, it's not a solution that's just cloud only where your information gets sent directly to the cloud and it's there. And now you have to wonder, if I need that data, how do I get that data back? It's not local only, right? Where it only resides in the next room over because a couple of things, right? What happens if something happens to the building? What happens if the access to the building is impacted? What happens if there's an outage of some sort? And then it's not file-based backup either. So what we do at Datto is we provide business continuity. And what continuity is, it's a hybrid cloud-based backup system, which means that we have both a local and an offsite presence. So your information is backed up locally. We send it to our private data center, and therefore it's located in multiple locations just in case if anything happens to either one of those locations. It's image-based, meaning that when we take a backup of the whole system, right? Everything, the operating system, your screensavers, everything. It delivers superior RTO and RPO. Once again, I showed you earlier, you're in a scenario, everything's running fine, you have a disaster. How long is it going to take you to get back up and running? How much data do you potentially lose? It eliminates downtime, and it has the ability to do what's called virtualization. I'll talk about that in a second. So what the Datto does, the Datto is able to back up everything from anything, whether it's a physical system or a virtual system. So if you have VMware or Hyper-V, where you have physical equipment, we're able to back it up to the SARS. What then happens is that it then replicates to the offsite private data center. That offsite private data center is located in Toronto. And then it also cross-replicates across the country to the secondary data center, which is in Calgary. So once again, we're utilizing Canadian data centers because it's Canadian data, and we make sure that it does not land in any other of our private data centers. So instant virtualization, what is that? All right, so let me break that down for you. So you have a computer or a server, and that server has been being backed up to a Datto appliance. That appliance lives on the same network as that computer. And every day you're backing up, every 5 minutes, every hour, whatever is the appropriate amount of time for you. And let's say something happens to that computer and you get ransomware. Because we've been backing that computer up every day, once again, on the hour, every 5 minutes, or whatever the case may have been, we can go to a previous point prior to that infection happening, and we can actually virtualize it or bring up a virtual instance of your server directly from that Datto box, and you're able to have business as usual, right? You're able to continue taking your orders, you're able to continue paying payroll, and continue accounts receivable. All of that stuff is able to still happen, even though your server may have been down because you've been doing those backups, right? And so that is the benefit of virtualization, right? It's going to reduce the amount of downtime you have. It's going to help your RTO and RPO, and it's going to be local and cloud. But that's not it, right? So we also have ransomware detection. And what ransomware detection is the ability that now that we've been taking backups of your servers, we want to make sure that those backups don't have any ransomware that may be hiding or sleeping or moving slow that is, you don't really notice it happening. And so what we're doing is we're taking a look at different points, and we're comparing those points to previous points, and we're seeing what types of changes are happening, right? And if we indicate anything that's suspicious, we're going to actually notify your service provider to say, hey, this doesn't look right. Everything looks good on the network in terms of, nobody's complaining or saying, hey, my computer isn't working, but we need to take a look at this because it is suspicious, and let's get ahead of it. And then if there is something that's wrong, we're able to start the process of restoring to a previous point prior to that infection. So it's really, really good because it's not only being a backup system, it's also checking and verifying and validating that all your points are healthy. So we want you to start thinking continuity, and that's for all of your data. We also have what's called our Datto SAS Protection. It's reliable, simple, secure SaaS backup for Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, right? And so you might say, why would I need SAS protection? Like, why do I care about the data that lives, in Microsoft and in Google? And I'm gonna tell you about that in a second. But one thing you need to know is that the migrations to the cloud are moving faster than ever. There was about a 700% increase last year of people going directly to the cloud, right? So utilizing Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. And a lot of that was fueled by COVID and people having to, work remotely and, just changing up how work was being handled. And so with that, we also have to understand and acknowledge that the number one way that these threats are happening in terms of ransomware and different sorts of phishing scams that are happening is going to be through your Microsoft 365 and your Google Workspace. When we start taking a look at the SaaS market, it's almost double from 2017. And by the end of this year, we're looking at about $113 billion industry, right? And so 78% of businesses will run all of their infrastructure, or a good majority of their infrastructure, utilizing SaaS applications. So before I pose a question, why should I care about, making sure that your data is safe, right? Why should I care about backing up, your Teams and your SharePoints and your OneDrives and things of that nature? The reason is simple. Microsoft and Google, they have what's called the shared responsibility model. So Microsoft will say, you know what, we're responsible for if there's a hardware failure on our part, if there's a software failure on our part, something happening in terms of the power, we'll get that squared away. Like those are the types of things that they are responsible for. But in terms of you as the service provider, or you as like the end customer, what you're responsible for is like a human error, right? Somebody went in and deleted something by accident, right? Malicious insiders, viruses, malware, all that stuff you're responsible for. So if something happens, and you go to Microsoft, they're going to say that our infrastructure is good. We did everything on our end. That is on you, right? And so that's why it's important to make sure that you are backing up and protecting that data that lives in those places as well. So when we start taking a look at the numbers, 7% of data loss is caused by a malicious deletion. Somebody did not get a raise that they expected. Somebody did not get that bonus they expected. Somebody, feels like somebody's targeting them, right? And so, they go in and they start deleting stuff. 13% of data loss is caused by a virus or hackers, right? The bad guys. And 47% of data loss is caused by end user deletions, right? And so that number is huge because before and earlier in this conversation, I talked about the human element, right? The human factor, right? If computers exist in the room by themselves without human intervention, then, there'll probably be no issues at all, right? But 47% is caused by end user deletions. And I can see this happening, right? You get an email on an alert that says you're 99.9% full. You are going to stop receiving emails shortly. Make sure you free up room or buy more storage or whatever the case may be. Someone goes in, they say, okay, let me just delete everything that's over a week old. A couple weeks go by, they're looking for, proposal or this or that. They can't find it. What happened? They deleted it. And that can happen for so many different situations. And that's why that number is, or one of the reasons why that number is so high. And let me show you how easy it would be to hack somebody's via their email, right? So there's a thing called Ransom Cloud. It's a variant of ransomware that is able to attack like Microsoft 365. So you receive an email, it looks something like this. It's Microsoft Anti-Spam Pro. It looks legitimate. It has like the logo for Microsoft, and everybody hates spam, and you think it's legitimate. Next thing you do is you click on the link, and now you have opportunity to back out now, right? This is like you can go either way, right? Because if you read this is saying this app would like to access your data anytime, sign in as you, read your contacts, read your calendar, send a mail as you, read and write access to your mail. Right, so you can hit cancel and you save yourself from a bad moment, or you hit accept. So most people probably hit accept because you've gotten this far already, and nobody ever reads that. Next thing you know, you look, and your emails are all encrypted. Like it's all gibberish. The only thing you can see is if you look at the subject line, it says infected, right? Because it wants to let you know that there is an issue, there is a problem. And then it shows you the title line, right? The subject line, because it wants you to see how important those emails that you no longer have access to are. And next thing you know, you see this pop up, right? So this is the ransomware. Send me $300, and we'll give you the key to unencrypt everything, right? And so it's something where you have to take note that you are still a threat, whether you're online, as I said before, or offline, or if you're in like Microsoft 365. So in terms of our Datto SAS Protection, it's a limited storage. It's quick. It's really simple and easy to set up. You can have multiple admins be able to actually operate it, and it can scale, right? So whether you are a small one-person shop, which still needs it, or you have 3,000, 4,000, or 10,000 users, it can scale and be able to accommodate pretty much any size organization. So we are wrapping up, but I do want to just hone in on this once again. I said that this is going to be one of the more important slides. Once again, in the event of a disaster, how long are you willing to be down or okay with being down? And how much data are you okay with losing, right? And so one of the things that we've done is we've created a downtime cost calculator. This right here will essentially is 10 questions. Those 10 questions are 6 current data storage questions and 4 state of the business questions. It's something that's really easy, and our friends at Compro can actually kind of go through this with you. And what it does is it gives you an estimated amount of your cost of downtime and how it differs from your current solution to what it would be with like a Datto solution. So it's not 100% science, right? Because there's other factors, but this gives you a good overall insight into what you're looking at when it comes to your current solution versus what your total downtime losses would be with a Datto solution. And so with that being said, I want you guys to all stay protected, and I want to pass it over back to Mike.
Thanks, Jason. First of all, Jason, I've been a part of quite a few webinars, and I want to compliment you on how conversational you made something like IT security, because it's not always the most interesting. So thank you very much. And it was just, as this webinar was coming up, I was reflecting on just the industry and what we're seeing as far as security breach attempts, and just how complex they're getting. In the last month, I've seen two really, really unique security issues. Someone in my network that works at a large Canadian university was telling me about a really interesting phishing email attack. And the email that the stakeholders, on the email list received detailed the university's plan to provide tuition subsidies to students who had been inconvenienced through COVID, working from home or learning from home. And so it's a topical issue. It was in the news. And all these students had to do was provide some of their student info and some personal information. Everything was on brand. They had a legitimate domain attached to the email. I thought it was real when I saw a copy of it. And the only reason it was caught was that key people identified quite quickly that the university would never ask for sensitive information in a mass email like this. And so some well-trained people at the university spotted right away that this isn't right. And unfortunately, a large number of students clicked that email and went through, and they've since been getting some support. But so the best way to protect your business is really to train your staff on common phishing techniques and security best practices. Have a secure network and strong data recovery plan, and have that data recovery plan as that final line of defense. Because at the end of the day, there's no silver bullet to security solutions. So thank you for joining us today. We hope the information will help all of you assess your business environment. If you aren't subscribed to Compro's newsletter or any of our social channels, including LinkedIn, please do. We have some great content that comes out regularly that includes some tips and updates on best practices, sometimes some promotions. And as a thank you for joining the call, if you'd like a complimentary security or network audit, we'd be happy to do that for you. You can send me an email at the email there on the screen, or connect with us via LinkedIn or through our website, or respond to some of the follow-up communications you'll be receiving post-webinar. So thank you everyone again, and we wish everyone the best and continued technology safety moving forward.
Thanks. Thank you guys for having me. It's been awesome, and hopefully you've have something you could take away, bring back to your organization that's going to help protect them and mitigate any sort of risk. So thanks, and Mike, if you ever need me, I'm here for you.
All right. Thanks, Jason.